Everyone says a woman remembers her wedding day for the rest of her life. I certainly remember mine. But not because of the dress, the flowers, or the vows. I remember it because, at exactly 5:30 that evening, nearly 200 guests turned toward the ballroom doors and waited for me to walk inside. I never did. 2 weeks earlier, I had come home 20 minutes ahead of schedule and overheard my parents planning to transform my wedding into a lavish anniversary celebration for my younger sister. They had expanded my guest list without permission. They had moved my wedding forward by 6 weeks. They had promised vendors that I would cover a ballroom package worth $63,000, plus flowers, photography, music, and a second white gown for my sister. No one had asked me. They did not believe they needed to. For most of my life, my family had treated my silence as approval and my success as a shared bank account. Whenever my sister wanted something, I was told she needed it more. Whenever I objected, my parents reminded me that I was the strong one, the mature one, the daughter who understood sacrifice. This time, I did not scream. I did not beg them to respect me. I did not stand in that hallway and give them the argument they expected. I walked away before they knew I had heard a word. For the next 2 weeks, they kept planning because they believed my silence meant I had finally surrendered. They were wrong. On the afternoon of their grand celebration, the ballroom lights dimmed. A screen came alive above the stage. My mother smiled because she believed the video would praise her family. Instead, my voice filled the room. And before the night was over, every person present understood exactly who had planned the spectacle, who had signed for it, and why the bride would never walk through those doors. My family wanted to use my wedding to prove how powerful they were. What they proved instead was that manipulation always carries a price. And for the first time in my life, I was not the one who paid it. 2 months before my wedding, I believed my greatest problem was choosing between ivory and soft white table linens. Michael and I were not planning anything extravagant. We had reserved a garden venue for late September, invited 74 people, and agreed that we would rather put our savings toward a home than spend it on crystal chandeliers and imported flowers. Our wedding was supposed to feel intimate. A small ceremony beneath old oak trees, dinner under strings of warm lights, music played by a local trio, a simple lemon cake. No dramatic entrances, no social performance, no pressure to impress people we barely knew. Just us. That was what I thought I was protecting when I stopped at my parents' house on a Thursday afternoon. A client meeting had ended earlier than expected, leaving me with almost an hour before my next appointment. I had picked up sandwiches from my mother's favorite deli and decided to surprise my parents with lunch. At 30, I was a licensed architect. I designed homes, offices, and community buildings for people who wanted openness, stability, and light. I understood how foundations carried weight. I understood how hidden fractures could travel through walls long before anyone saw the damage. What I had never fully understood was why I kept trying to renovate a family that had never admitted anything was broken. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside, with the paper bag tucked against my side. The house smelled of lemon cleaner and rose potpourri. My mother had used the same scent in the entryway since I was a child. I opened my mouth to call out. Then I heard my name. "She'll cover the ballroom package," my mother said from the dining room. "Claire always finds a way." I stopped beside the staircase. The dining room door was not fully closed. Through the narrow opening, I could hear my mother, my father, my younger sister Sophie, and Sophie's husband, Thomas. "We need to slow down," Thomas said. "Claire hasn't agreed to any of this." Sophie laughed. "She will. She always complains at first, then decides keeping the family together matters more." My father spoke next. "The ballroom had a cancellation for 2 weeks from Saturday. If we do not take it now, someone else will. Combining the events is financially sensible." My wedding was not supposed to happen in 2 weeks. It was supposed to happen in 2 months. They were moving it forward by 6 weeks. Without telling me. My mother lowered her voice, but not enough. "The venue manager thinks Claire is delighted. I told him she wanted to surprise everyone by including Sophie and Thomas's 5th anniversary." Sophie gave a pleased little sigh. It is not just an anniversary. 5 years matters. Thomas replied. It does not matter more than her wedding. The room became briefly silent. I had never heard Thomas openly challenge Sophie before. My mother broke the silence. No one said it mattered more. We are celebrating both couples. Sophie and Thomas will renew their vows first. Claire and Michael will follow. And the entrance? Sophie asked. You and Thomas will come down the staircase first. You were married first, so it makes sense chronologically. Sophie laughed again. I could picture her smile without seeing it. It was the expression she wore whenever something intended for me shifted naturally into her hands. My father poured a drink. Ice struck glass. The ballroom package is $63,000, he said. That includes the room, catering, bar service, linens, staff, and basic production. The deposit is $6,000. The remaining $57,000 is due on the event date. Thomas sounded stunned. And who is paying for that? My mother did not hesitate. Claire. Something inside me became perfectly still. My father continued. The florist, photographer, quartet, and Sophie's gown are separate, but Claire and Michael can afford it. They both earn good money. They are saving for a house, Thomas said. Sophie answered sharply. So are we. Why should they be the only ones allowed to have nice things? My mother soothed her. No one is taking anything from them. Claire enjoys helping. Being needed makes her feel important. My grip tightened around the paper bag. 5 years earlier, I had emptied the education fund meant for graduate school to save Sophie's first wedding. I had told myself it was a single sacrifice. My family had apparently interpreted it as a permanent financial arrangement. My mother continued describing the plans. The florist had prepared an estimate for imported orchids and lavender roses. A photographer had been told to recreate scenes from Sophie and Thomas's original wedding. A string quartet had been contacted. There would be a champagne tower and a 5-tier cake, 1 tier for every year of Sophie's marriage. My own wedding would be included on the lowest tier. Then my father mentioned the guest list. Margaret has expanded it to almost 200. I stopped breathing. Michael and I had invited 74 people. My mother sounded proud. We cannot hold an event like this and exclude people. I added relatives, church friends, your golf contacts, Sophie's coworkers, and several neighbors. What about Claire's original list? Thomas asked. They are included. All 74? Of course, Sophie said. Some of them will probably be grateful. Her wedding was going to be so small. My father chuckled. She has never understood presentation. A floorboard shifted beneath my shoe. Inside the dining room, my mother stopped speaking. Did you hear something? Thomas asked. The house settling, my father replied. For one dangerous second, I wanted to walk through the door. I wanted to place the sandwiches on the table and ask my parents how long they had been promising my money to strangers. I wanted to ask Sophie whether she had ever loved me or only loved what I could provide. But another voice rose inside me. It was quieter than anger. It sounded like every therapist who had ever told me to stop explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. It sounded like every journal entry in which I had promised that the next time my family crossed a boundary, I would respond with something stronger than tears. Information first. Reaction later. I backed away. I crossed the entryway and slipped outside without closing the door too loudly. By the time I reached my car, my knees were shaking. I placed the sandwiches on the passenger seat and sat behind the wheel, staring at the house I had helped renovate 3 summers earlier. I had designed the expanded kitchen. I had drawn the plans for the open dining room. I had spent weekends sanding cabinets because my parents could not afford the contractor they wanted. They praised the house constantly. No one ever mentioned who had made it possible. My phone felt heavy in my hand when I called Michael. He answered on the second ring. Hey love, aren't you heading to the Westbrook meeting? They're doing it again, I said. My voice sounded strange, too calm, almost distant. Who? My family. I told him what I had heard. I expected him to interrupt. He did not. When I reached the part about the $63,000 ballroom package, he exhaled slowly. Did you sign anything? No. Did you authorize anyone to use your card? No. Did you agree to change the date? No. Did you approve the new guest list? No. His voice became firm. Then they do not have your wedding. They have a fantasy. I closed my eyes. They think I will give in. They think the woman you were 5 years ago is still making your decisions. I looked through the windshield at the maple tree beside the driveway. My grandfather had planted it when Sophie was born. Every autumn, my mother arranged family photographs beneath it. Sophie always stood in the center. What do? I asked. Michael did not tell me to confront them. He did not tell me to forgive them or preserve the peace. He asked one question. What do you want? No one in my family had asked me that. Not once. I want our wedding back. Then we take it back. I opened my eyes and looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back at me appeared frightened, but she did not look broken. My mother called that evening. Her voice was bright and affectionate. Family dinner tomorrow, sweetheart. We have something wonderful to discuss. I looked across the apartment at Michael. He nodded once. I smiled into the phone. I'll be there. The phrase my family used most often to control me was not, "You owe us." It was, "You are the responsible one." It sounded like praise when I was young. By the time I understood it was a sentence, I had already lost years of my life to it. Sophie was 3 years younger than me and had always been described as sensitive. If she forgot homework, my parents blamed the teacher for overwhelming her. If she broke curfew, they blamed whichever friend had encouraged her. If she insulted someone and cried afterward, the person she had hurt was expected to comfort her. I was different. At 12, I was trusted to make dinner when my mother worked late. At 14, I helped my father track household expenses after he injured his back. At 16, I drove Sophie to dance rehearsals and waited in the parking lot because she did not like being alone after dark. She needs you, my mother would say. No one ever asked what I needed. The pattern followed us into adulthood. 5 years before my own wedding, Sophie became engaged to Thomas. Their original plan was modest. Then Sophie visited a luxury venue, tried on a designer gown, and decided her wedding should look like something from a magazine. Within 3 months, the budget tripled. My father called me into his study one evening. I was 25 and had just been admitted to a graduate architecture program. I had saved $15,000 through scholarships, part-time work, and years of refusing almost everything I wanted. My father closed the door. Sophie's deposits are due. My mother stood beside him with her arms crossed. I remember feeling as if I had entered a meeting where the verdict had already been written. How much does she need? I asked. My father slid a paper across the desk. $15,000. Exactly what I had saved. That is my tuition fund. It is only 1 semester, my mother said. You can defer. I may lose my place. My mother's mouth tightened. Your sister only gets 1 wedding. I looked at my father. He would not meet my eyes. If you loved her, my mother continued, you would understand. That sentence did what it was designed to do. I transferred the money the next morning. They promised to repay me within a year. They never did. I lost my place in the program and spent the next 2 years working full-time while taking night courses. I eventually became licensed, but the road was longer and harder than it needed to be. At Sophie's reception, my parents toasted her elegance, resilience, and vision. No one mentioned the sister who had paid for the imported flowers or the final installment on the dress. I cried in a bathroom stall, washed my face, and returned to help the coordinator find the missing guest book. That was what the responsible daughter did. 3 years later, I discovered a credit account linked to my name. I was applying for mortgage pre-approval when the banker asked about an account I did not recognize. The card had been opened as a secondary account under my mother's credit line, using personal information she had retained from helping me complete college paperwork. The charges included home decor, restaurant bills, boutique clothing, and part of a trip to Napa Valley. When I confronted her, she barely looked embarrassed. You were not using your credit, she said. We needed flexibility. You used my identity. Do not be dramatic, Claire. The balance was just over $4,000. My mother promised to pay it. She missed 2 payments, and I quietly cleared the debt to protect my credit score. I closed the account and told myself the problem was over. It was not over. I had only taught them that even when I discovered the truth, I would absorb the damage. Michael knew some of that history, but not all of it. The night before the family dinner, I told him everything. We sat at our kitchen table with untouched coffee between us. I described the tuition fund, the secret credit account, and all the smaller moments I had trained myself to dismiss. The Thanksgiving when I worked a double shift, bought the forgotten desserts, and watched my father praise Sophie for bringing cranberry sauce, the cranberry sauce I had also purchased. The summer I redesigned my parents' house for free, then listened as my mother told neighbors that Sophie had helped choose the creative vision. The birthdays when Sophie received gifts on my day, because she felt excluded. Michael listened without interrupting. When I finished, he reached across the table. Why did you never tell me all of this? Because it sounds pathetic when I say it aloud. It sounds like financial abuse. The words made me flinch. My parents never hit me. Abuse does not always leave a bruise. I looked at him. Michael's older sister, Ellen, was an attorney. She had spent years handling contract disputes before opening a practice focused on family financial conflicts. At Thanksgiving the year before, she had made a joke while reviewing a contractor's estimate for their parents. Never let anyone use your name, unless you are holding the pen. I had laughed then. Now the sentence felt like a warning I had ignored. The following evening, Michael and I arrived at my parents' house at 6. The dining table was set with my mother's best china. Roast chicken, garlic potatoes, and lemon asparagus filled the room with the comforting smells of childhood. Sophie wore a lavender blouse. Thomas sat beside her, unusually quiet. My father opened wine. My mother hugged me and called me her beautiful bride. The performance was almost impressive. For 40 minutes, no one mentioned the ballroom. They asked about work. Sophie complimented Michael's tie. My father described a new boundary fence he wanted to build around the wooded parcel our family had owned for 3 generations. That land will never be sold, he said. Your grandfather protected it, and I will too. It is our legacy. I noticed Thomas look at him strangely. At the time, I did not understand why. After dinner, my mother placed her napkin beside her plate. We have the most wonderful surprise. Sophie immediately pulled a lavender folder from her bag. Inside were photographs of the ballroom, sample menus, flower arrangements, and a diagram of the grand staircase. My mother explained that the venue had experienced a cancellation 2 weeks away. It was too special to lose, she said. They had decided to move my wedding forward by 6 weeks and combine it with Sophie and Thomas's anniversary. 2 couples, she said. 2 milestones. 1 unforgettable family celebration. Michael remained completely still. Sophie opened a page labeled Entrances. Thomas and I will come down first for our vow renewal. Then you and Michael can enter. After you? I asked. It makes sense chronologically. We were married first. Thomas shifted in his seat. I thought we agreed the wedding should remain the main ceremony. Sophie's smile tightened. It will be. Mostly. My mother hurried forward. You will have your own vows, and your own dance. Sophie will have her anniversary cake, and you will share the lower tier. I looked through the folder. The ballroom package was listed at $63,000. Separate estimates included $8,000 for floral design, $4,000 for photography, $3,000 for the quartet and sound equipment, and $3,200 for Sophie's anniversary gown. The actual event would cost far more than the ballroom package alone. Then I found the guest list. My original 74 names had become 198. My mother had added church members, distant relatives, my father's golf friends, Sophie's co-workers, former neighbors, and people Michael and I had never met. You invited almost 200 people? My mother looked pleased. We could not exclude anyone from an event this important. It was not your guest list. It is a family celebration. Who told everyone the date had changed? I sent an email explaining that we had received a once-in-a-lifetime venue upgrade. Michael finally spoke. You moved our wedding and informed guests before Claire agreed? My father raised a hand. We had to act quickly. And who is paying for all of this? I asked. My father leaned back. We assumed you and Michael would cover the ballroom and most of the additional vendors. We have already promised the deposit. Michael's expression hardened. You committed our money? My mother lifted both hands. No one is committing anything. We are presenting an opportunity. Sophie touched my arm. You can afford it, Claire, and it would mean so much to me. I looked at her hand until she removed it. My mother softened her voice. You have always understood that family requires sacrifice. That is what makes you special. There it was. The leash dressed as a compliment. Everyone watched me. They expected anger, tears, or reluctant agreement. I gave them none of those things. I need time to think. The silence was immediate. My father frowned. The date cannot be held indefinitely. Then no one should sign anything until I decide. Sophie looked offended. We have already told people. That was your choice. My mother's smile flickered. Of course. Take a day or two. On the drive home, Michael waited until we were several blocks away before speaking. They are not asking for a wedding. No, they are asking for access. I looked at the lavender folder Sophie had conveniently left in my lap. Between the catering menu and floral estimate was a summary page. Under expected payer, someone had typed my full name. Claire Dalton. There was no signature. No authorization. Only an assumption printed in purple. That page was the first piece of evidence I kept. It was not the last. The first vendor contacted me the next morning. Her name was Melissa, and she managed a floral studio downtown. I wanted to confirm your approval before ordering the imported orchids, she said. Your mother requested a significant increase yesterday. I was standing in the corridor outside a project meeting. What approval do you currently have from me? There was a pause. Your mother said she was coordinating on your behalf. Did I sign your agreement? No, we have not received a signature yet. Did I provide payment information? Not directly. I leaned against the wall. Melissa, please send me every communication in which my name is used as the responsible party. Do not order anything until you receive written authorization from the person signing your contract. Her tone changed. Is there a problem? There may be. Within an hour, Melissa forwarded an email chain. My mother had written, Claire is delighted to host the combined wedding and anniversary celebration. She will be responsible for the remaining balances. Please proceed as though payment is guaranteed. Other emails followed. The caterer had been told I approved the premium menu. The photographer had been told to devote the first hour to recreating Sophie and Thomas's original wedding photographs. The quartet had been instructed to prepare a dramatic anniversary entrance before my ceremony. No one had forged my signature. They had done something more familiar. They had spoken as if my silence were equivalent to consent. That afternoon, another notification arrived, this time from my credit card company. A charge of $3,200 had been attempted through my Amazon account. The item was a white designer gown. The shipping address belonged to Sophie. The card company had flagged the transaction because the amount was unusual and requested confirmation. I stared at the screen until my anger became cold enough to use. Then I locked the card, reported the transaction as unauthorized, and requested a replacement. I opened my Amazon account and found that Sophie's profile was still linked to the household account I had created years earlier. The gown sat in pending orders. Under the product image was a note Sophie had typed. Vow renewal gown, Mom says Claire is covering. I took screenshots before canceling it. Then I disabled every secondary user. When the confirmation box asked whether I was certain, I pressed yes without hesitation. That evening, Michael and I went to Ellen's office. Ellen Prescott was 11 years older than Michael, and had the ability to make a room feel orderly simply by entering it. She wore a navy suit, read every page twice, and asked questions that stripped emotion from the facts. Did you sign any vendor agreement? No. Did you give your parents power of attorney? No. Did you tell any vendor they could rely on your payment? No. Did you pay the ballroom deposit? No. She placed her pen down. Then the legal issue is simpler than the family issue. I almost laughed. That is not comforting. It should be. Your relatives are counting on social pressure, not enforceable obligations. I showed her the lavender budget page, the vendor emails, and the attempted gown purchase. Ellen read the messages carefully. Your mother is representing that she has authority she does not have. The vendors should be notified before they incur additional expenses. Can we notify them now? We can, but the ballroom contract has not been signed. How do you know? The manager sent you a draft this morning after Michael contacted him. Your name appears as the proposed client, but there is no signature. Michael leaned forward. What happens if Claire refuses to sign? The venue can cancel the hold unless another party accepts responsibility. I understood immediately. My parents will sign. Ellen studied me. Probably. They believe I will reimburse them. Almost certainly. A strange calm settled over me. For once, their confidence in my obedience might protect me. Ellen opened a new document. I will prepare a formal notice stating that you have not authorized anyone to contract in your name and will not accept financial responsibility for agreements you did not sign. We send it as soon as the actual contracting parties are identified. Why not send it now? Because the venue currently has only a temporary hold. If your parents sign under their own names, responsibility becomes clear. If they refuse, the event ends before more damage occurs. Michael looked uncomfortable. Are we trapping them? Ellen answered before I could. No, we are allowing adults to choose whether to sign a contract after Claire has explicitly declined. Daniel will explain the terms. There will be no deception. That distinction mattered. I was not creating a debt for them. I was refusing to accept one they had created for me. Janice Reed joined us an hour later. Janice had been my friend since college and had built a career planning corporate galas, weddings, and nonprofit events. She entered carrying 2 planners and a bag of takeout, listened to the situation, and became furious in under 3 minutes. They moved your wedding without permission? Yes. They made Sophie the first entrance? Yes. They placed your initials on the lowest tier of her cake? Yes. Janice opened one planner. I have never hated lavender more. Ellen explained the legal strategy. Janice listened, then tapped her pen against the table. There is another issue. Claire and Michael still need a wedding. We could return to our original date, I said. Michael turned toward me. Do you want to? I considered the question. Nearly 200 people now believed I was getting married in 2 weeks. My family had turned the next 14 days into a countdown. Even if we canceled everything, they would describe the story as though I had destroyed my own wedding out of jealousy. More importantly, I no longer wanted to spend 2 additional months waiting for my family's next move. I want to marry Michael, I said. I do not care about the ballroom. Janice smiled slowly. My aunt manages the Willow Creek Lake House. It is 20 minutes from the ballroom. She uses it for retreats and private ceremonies. I knew Willow Creek. It was the same lake where my grandfather had taken Sophie and me fishing when we were children. After overhearing my family, I had driven to the old marina because it was the only place where I could think clearly. Janice continued. The lawn faces east. There is an oak tree near the water and room for 25 people. We could hold the ceremony that morning. Michael squeezed my hand. Ellen said, you would be legally married before their event begins. Janice turned another page. We keep it small. No public invitations. Only people you trust. Something inside me loosened. A wedding did not need a ballroom. It needed 2 people who understood what they were promising. We do it, I said. Janice began making calls. As she worked, she mentioned that she had coordinated several events at the ballroom. I know Daniel, the venue manager, and the production director. They are careful people. Once Ellen sends the legal notice, Daniel will want a clear record of your position. Ellen nodded. If the ballroom continues advertising Claire as the bride after receiving notice that she did not approve the event, they may want a statement from her explaining her absence. Janice looked at me. That could be a written statement. Or a video, I said. Ellen's expression sharpened. A factual video. No insults, no private information, no speculation. Only documents, dates, and your personal statement. Janice smiled. I can arrange that. We stayed in Ellen's office until nearly midnight. By the time we left, the private ceremony had a location, an officiant, and a guest list. The legal notice was drafted but unsent. The evidence was organized by date, and a possible statement to the ballroom had begun taking shape. In the parking garage, Michael took both my hands. You can still stop any part of this. I know. This does not have to become revenge. It is not. What is it? I looked down at our joined hands. A boundary they cannot pretend they misunderstood. The ballroom tour took place 3 days later. My parents arrived, dressed as if they were being photographed for a society magazine. My mother wore cream trousers and a silk blouse. My father carried a leather folder even though every document had been prepared by someone else. Sophie wore lavender. Of course she did. Thomas walked beside her, but the distance between them was noticeable. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung above polished marble floors. Tall windows flooded the room with afternoon light. A double staircase curved down from the mezzanine, perfectly designed for dramatic entrances. My mother stepped into the center of the room and turned slowly. This is what our family deserves, not what I deserved. Our family. Daniel introduced himself and reviewed the schedule. The anniversary vow renewal would begin at 5. My wedding ceremony would follow at 5:30. Cocktails would begin at 6. Dinner would be served at 7. The ballroom package included the venue, catering, bar service, linens, staffing, and basic audio-visual production. The remaining $57,000 would be due by noon on the event date. Flowers, photography, the quartet, and specialty clothing were separate agreements. Every detail was explained clearly. My father nodded without concern. Daniel placed the ballroom contract on the table. The $6,000 deposit holds the date. We need the contracting party's signatures today. My mother pushed the folder toward me. Go ahead, sweetheart. I did not touch the pen. Michael and I agreed that we both approve and sign all wedding expenses. My father waved one hand. This is only to secure the date. It is a binding agreement. You can review it later. I have reviewed it. Sophie stepped closer. Claire, if we lose the ballroom now, everything is ruined, Thomas said quietly. Then perhaps no one should have announced it before she signed. Sophie turned on him. Whose side are you on? I am asking a fair question, my mother interrupted. There is no reason to create tension. Claire has enough stress. Your father and I can sign temporarily. Daniel corrected her. The signatories remain financially responsible unless the contract is formally reassigned with the venue's written approval. My mother glanced at my father. He looked at me. You intend to reimburse us, correct? I said I needed time to think. We do not have time. That is not my fault. Sophie's eyes narrowed. You are doing this to punish me. No, I am refusing to sign a $63,000 ballroom contract I did not request. My mother placed a hand against her chest. Must you make everything sound so cold? Daniel looked increasingly uncomfortable. My father picked up the pen. Fine, we will sign. Claire and Michael can settle their portion with us privately. He signed his full name. James Dalton. My mother signed beneath him. Margaret Dalton. My father opened his banking application and transferred the $6,000 deposit from their joint savings account. Daniel confirmed receipt. Your date is secured. The outstanding $57,000 is due by noon on the event date. The contract remains under your names unless the venue approves a written reassignment. My father closed the folder. Understood. There was no confusion, no hidden clause, no deception. They knew exactly what they were signing. They simply believed I would rescue them later. As we walked toward the exit, my mother linked her arm through mine. See how easy things are when everyone cooperates? I looked at her hand. For some people. Outside, Michael and I entered our car. My parents drove away with Sophie and Thomas, already discussing the champagne tower. I sent Ellen the message we had prepared. They signed under their own names. Deposit paid from their account. Send the notices. Within 15 minutes, Ellen emailed Daniel, the caterer, florist, photographer, quartet, production company, and dressmaker. The message stated that I had not authorized anyone to contract on my behalf, had not accepted financial responsibility, and would not ratify agreements signed by James Dalton, Margaret Dalton, Sophie Parker, or Thomas Parker. She requested written acknowledgement from every company. Daniel replied first. We confirm that the ballroom contract is held exclusively by James and Margaret Dalton. Claire Dalton is neither a signatory nor a financially responsible party. The caterer followed, then the florist, then the photographer, Then the quartet. By evening, every vendor had confirmed that I was not responsible unless I personally signed a separate agreement. Ellen saved the responses in digital and printed form. The paper trail was complete. Daniel also requested a phone call. He explained that my name and photograph appeared throughout the event schedule and on the invitations my mother had distributed. "If you do not intend to attend," he said, "the venue needs a clear record. Guests may believe we misrepresented the event." "I do not intend to attend." "Would you provide a written statement?" Ellen answered. "Claire can provide a recorded statement explaining that she did not authorize the event. Your legal team may review it before anything is shown." Daniel agreed. "If Claire has not arrived by 5:30, we can play the approved statement before proceeding. That protects the venue and gives guests accurate information. Nothing would be hidden. Nothing would be switched without authorization. My statement would be reviewed by the ballroom's legal team and played only if I did not appear." That night, my mother called. "The ballroom was beautiful, was it not?" "Yes. I knew you would come around. I did not sign anything." She laughed softly. "Your father and I signed for convenience. Families settle these things privately. I suggest you read the payment terms." Her tone changed slightly. "Why are you speaking to me like this?" "Like what?" "Like a lawyer." I looked across the room at Michael, who was preparing dinner. "Maybe because someone needed to." My mother went silent. Then she returned to the voice she used when pretending nothing was wrong. "Sophie's dress appointment is tomorrow. You should come." "I have work." "She will be disappointed." "She will survive." I ended the call. The next morning, Sophie sent me photographs of 2 white gowns. The first was my original dress, a simple satin design I had ordered months earlier. The second was the ornate designer gown, whose charge I had blocked. Across my dress photo, Sophie had written, "Bridal version can be simplified for Claire." Across hers, "Anniversary bride." Below the images, she wrote, "Mom says we can reorder mine with Dad's card until your new card arrives. Do not make this difficult." I stared at the message. Then another appeared. "You already had your turn planning. Let me have mine." I typed 3 words. "You had yours." Sophie called immediately. I declined. She called again. I declined again. By lunchtime, my mother called from a different number. I allowed it to go to voicemail. That afternoon, Ellen confirmed the disputed gown charge had been canceled and the credit card company had opened a fraud investigation. Because the order had never shipped, Sophie would not receive the dress. My family still did not understand what had changed. They believed I was irritated. They believed I would eventually become practical. They believed the pressure of nearly 200 guests would force me to appear. They had no idea that Janice had already secured Willow Creek, that an officiant had confirmed our license appointment, or that my real wedding dress was no longer hanging in the bridal shop. Because alterations on the original gown had not begun, the shop allowed me to exchange it for a simpler dress already in stock and applied most of my deposit to the new purchase. Janice collected it that morning. The ballroom contract belonged to my parents. The wedding belonged to me. My family did not respond to resistance with reflection. They responded by increasing pressure. My mother tried guilt first. She called early Monday morning, crying so hard that I could barely understand her. "Your grandmother is devastated." I sat upright in bed. "What happened?" "She heard you might not participate fully in the celebration." My grandmother lived in an assisted living community 40 minutes away. She had a manageable heart condition, but my mother had used her health as emotional leverage before. Who told her that? That is not the point. She has been looking forward to seeing both granddaughters celebrate together. She said it gave her something to live for. I closed my eyes. The cruelty of that sentence was not directed only at me. It turned my grandmother's life into a weapon. Has her doctor said she is in danger? My mother stopped crying for half a second. How can you ask something so clinical? Because you are telling me my wedding decision may kill her. I did not say that. You implied it. I am asking you to think beyond yourself. For most of my life, those words would have worked. I would have pictured my grandmother alone and frightened. I would have surrendered before checking whether the emergency was real. This time, I called the assisted living center after ending the conversation. My grandmother was attending a gardening activity. She was fine. When I spoke to her, she sounded cheerful. Your mother said you are planning something unusual, she said. Did she say I was refusing to marry Michael? No, only that there had been disagreements. Are you upset? My grandmother was quiet for a moment. I am too old to want a party more than I want my granddaughter to be happy. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you. I hope you invite me wherever the real wedding is. I smiled. You are already on the list. My father tried money next. He asked me to meet him at a cafe near my office. He arrived with a folder and the manner of a businessman offering a generous settlement. If you attend the event, cooperate with the schedule, and help us clear the final balance, he said. Your mother and I will contribute $50,000 toward your first house. I stared at him. You want me to help pay $57,000 for the ballroom, plus separate vendor bills, so you can promise $50,000 later? His jaw tightened. It would not work exactly that way. How would it work? You and Michael cover the immediate expenses. We help with your down payment over time. So I give you real money now, and you promise possible money later. You are being disrespectful. I am doing arithmetic. He leaned forward. You have always been mature. Do not destroy your reputation over pride. My reputation with whom? With the family. With our friends. With everyone attending. I finally understood. He was not afraid of losing me. He was afraid of being embarrassed. I will not pay the ballroom balance. His face hardened. Then do not expect help from us again. I almost laughed. I stopped expecting that years ago. He left without finishing his coffee. Sophie tried anger. Her first message arrived that evening. You have always been jealous because Mom and Dad find me easier to love. I read it twice. Then another appeared. You think having a career makes you better than me. Then, if you ruin this, Thomas will never forgive you. I did not respond. An hour later, Thomas called. His voice sounded exhausted. I did not know Sophie ordered the gown using your card. Now you do. I told her the anniversary should not be part of your wedding. Why did you attend the planning meetings? Because your mother said you had agreed. Sophie said you wanted to surprise everyone. Did you believe that? He hesitated too long. I wanted to. That answer was more honest than an excuse. Thomas, the ballroom contract is not mine. I am not paying it. I suspected that. Does Sophie know? She thinks you will change your mind. She is wrong. He exhaled. Claire, I am sorry. Sorry is useful only when it changes what you do next. After the call, I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My hair fell halfway down my back. My mother had always insisted I keep it long, because shorter styles made my face look too severe. For years, I had allowed her preferences to live on my body. The next morning, I went to a salon and asked the stylist to cut it just above my shoulders. When she made the first cut, I expected regret. I felt relief. It was not a magical transformation. I did not become another person because hair fell to the floor. I simply recognized the woman in the mirror a little more clearly. That night, Michael and I changed every remaining password: banking, email, social media, cloud storage, and shopping accounts. We enabled two-factor authentication and reviewed my credit report. Ellen helped me place an identity alert and document the unauthorized gown purchase. No more shared access. No more family convenience. No more assumption that my private information belonged to everyone. Meanwhile, Janice transformed Willow Creek. She kept the ceremony intentionally simple. 22 guests. Wildflowers instead of imported orchids. White ribbons tied to birch branches. A small wooden arch beneath the oak tree. Breakfast afterward at the lake house. My grandmother would attend with a staff member from her residence. Michael's parents, Ellen, and a few close friends agreed to complete secrecy. Janice also helped me prepare the statement for the ballroom. Daniel and the venue's legal team had given us clear requirements. The statement could explain that I had not authorized the event, that I would not attend, and that I was not responsible for the contracts. Supporting documents could be shown if private information was removed. Ellen reviewed every word. There were no accusations we could not prove. No account numbers. No home addresses. No insults. Only dates, emails, contracts, and my own experience. The first frame would show the ballroom invitation. Then my words. This celebration was planned without the bride's consent. The video would not yet include footage from my real wedding. That would be recorded on the morning of the ceremony and delivered to Daniel before the venue's deadline. 3 days before the event, my parents hosted one final planning dinner. My father raised a glass and spoke proudly about family legacy. He told Thomas that the wooded Dalton parcel would remain in the family forever. That land is the one thing no debt or embarrassment could make me sell, he said. My mother smiled. We have never had a serious debt. I looked at the signed ballroom contract resting on the sideboard. Thomas followed my gaze. Across the table, Sophie was unusually quiet. When my mother began discussing the entrance order again, Sophie asked, "Claire, you are coming, right?" The question surprised me. For the first time, I heard uncertainty rather than entitlement. My mother answered for me. "Of course she is." Sophie continued looking at me. "Did you actually agree to everything?" The room became still. My mother's voice sharpened. "We are not revisiting this," Thomas said. That was a fair question. My father set down his glass. "The date is secured. Guests are coming. There is nothing left to discuss." Sophie looked away. It was only a small fracture, but I saw it. My sister was beginning to understand that our mother had never obtained my consent. She did not stop the event. She did not apologize. But for the first time, she appeared afraid of what their assumptions might cost. Before leaving, my mother hugged me. "We will see you Saturday morning." I hugged her back just long enough to maintain the illusion. "Yes," I said, "Saturday will change everything." On the morning of the celebration, I woke at 5:30. For several seconds, I lay still and listened to Michael breathe beside me. Then I remembered. This was my wedding day. Not my mother's event. Not Sophie's anniversary. Mine. My phone already contained 7 messages. My mother had sent the schedule before 5 in the morning. Hair at 8. Makeup at 10. Ballroom arrival at 2. Family photographs at 3. Anniversary ceremony at 5. Wedding immediately afterward. Sophie had sent a photograph of herself in a silk robe with bride again embroidered across the back. "Cannot wait to share our day," she wrote. I placed the phone face down. At 7, Janice arrived carrying coffee and a garment bag. My real wedding dress was not the elaborate satin gown my mother had selected months earlier. It was a simple ivory design with clean lines, a square neckline, and no train. When I put it on, I did not feel transformed into a princess. I felt like myself. My newly shortened hair fell in loose waves around my face. Janice studied me in the mirror. "You look free," I smiled. "That is the goal." At 7:45, she took the only decoy photograph we used. I wore a borrowed bridal robe and sat in front of a blank wall while she held a makeup brush near my cheek. The background revealed nothing. She sent the image to the family group chat. "Running behind, but we are getting there." My mother responded with 3 heart symbols. Sophie wrote, "Do not forget the earrings I chose." At 8:30, Michael and I left for Willow Creek. He wore a navy suit without a tie. I wore a long coat over my dress and flat shoes. The city was only beginning to wake. As we drove, Michael kept one hand on the steering wheel and reached for mine with the other. "Nervous?" he asked. "Not about marrying you. About the rest?" "Yes. We can still send only a written statement." I looked through the window at the morning light. "If I do not speak, they will tell everyone I abandoned them without explanation. We know the truth. I spent 30 years allowing them to control the public version of my life. I need to say it once, clearly." He nodded. "Then we say it." Willow Creek appeared between the trees, shortly after 9. The lake was perfectly still. White ribbons moved in the breeze, and wildflowers lined a narrow aisle leading toward the oak tree. 22 people waited on the lawn. My grandmother sat in the front row wearing pale blue. When she saw me, she pressed one hand to her mouth. Michael's mother began to cry before the music started. Ellen stood beside the officiant with the marriage license secured inside a leather folder. Janice's partner played acoustic guitar. There was no ballroom entrance. No chandelier. No announcement. I removed my shoes and walked through the grass. Every step felt like leaving a version of myself behind. The daughter, who confused obedience with love. The sister who paid for peace. The woman who apologized whenever someone else crossed her boundaries. Michael waited beneath the oak tree. His expression held no surprise, no demand, and no expectation that I become smaller for him. When I reached him, he whispered, "There you are." The officiant spoke about partnership, honesty, and the courage to choose a life together. Then it was time for our vows. I unfolded a single page. "Michael, I spent much of my life believing love was measured by how much pain I could absorb without complaining. You taught me that real love does not ask someone to disappear. It makes room for them to exist fully. I promise I will never again confuse silence with peace. I will tell you what I need, listen when you tell me what you need, and protect the life we build together. Today, I choose you freely, not because anyone expects it, not because anyone arranged it, and not because I am afraid to stand alone. I choose you because beside you, I have never had to become less." Michael's eyes filled with tears. He took both my hands. "Claire, I do not choose the version of you your family found useful. I choose the woman who thinks deeply, loves fiercely, and builds safety where other people created uncertainty. I promise I will never ask you to purchase harmony with your dignity. I will stand beside you, not in front of you, and I will remind you that your voice is not a problem to be managed. You spent years building homes for other people. I promise to build one with you." When we exchanged rings, sunlight broke through the trees. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife at 9:47 in the morning. There was no thunderous applause. Only laughter, tears, and the sound of the lake moving against the shore. My grandmother hugged me afterward. "I knew this was the real wedding," she whispered. "How? You look happy." Breakfast was served on the porch. There were pastries, fruit, coffee, and a small lemon cake. Michael's father offered a toast. "To honesty," he said, "and to the kind of love that does not keep score." At 11, Janice led Michael and me into a quiet room inside the lake house. A camera stood near the window. I was still wearing my dress. My ring was visible. Janice pressed record. I looked into the lens. "If you are watching this, you were invited to a celebration I never approved." I explained what had happened. I described the decision to move my wedding date without consent, the expansion of the guest list, the emails promising my money, the unauthorized gown order, and the ballroom contract my parents had signed. I did not insult them. I did not speculate about their motives. I used their own words. The video displayed my mother's email to the florist. Then the lavender budget page. Then the attempted gown purchase with all private information removed. Then, the ballroom contract. James Dalton. Margaret Dalton. 2 signatures. Neither was mine. The vendor confirmations followed. Every document stated that I had no financial responsibility. At the end, the camera returned to me. This morning, Michael and I were married at Willow Creek, surrounded by people who respected our choices. We are safe, we are happy, and we will not be attending the ballroom event. My parents and sister created tonight's celebration. They selected it, signed for it, and invited you. Any questions about its cost should be directed to them. I wish every guest a peaceful evening, but I will no longer fund a family tradition built on my silence. Janice stopped recording. No one spoke for several seconds. Ellen reviewed the final section, approved it, and sent the complete file to Daniel. The ballroom's legal team reviewed it. Shortly before noon, Daniel confirmed that the statement would play at 5:30 if I had not arrived. At noon, my father received the ballroom's demand for the remaining $57,000. He called me immediately. I watched his name appear on the screen, then disappear. He called again. My mother called. Sophie called. I turned off the phone. At the ballroom, they still believed there had been a temporary misunderstanding. My parents assumed I would arrive and transfer the money. Sophie assumed I would step into a simplified version of my own dress and follow her down the staircase. Nearly 200 guests began entering at 4. My family smiled for photographs. The quartet played. The champagne tower reflected the chandeliers. Everything looked perfect. Because structures often appear strongest in the moment before they collapse. I learned most of what happened in the ballroom from the venue's incident report, guest recordings, and Thomas's account. By 4:30, nearly every table was occupied. Guests admired the floral arrangements and the enormous 5-tier cake decorated with lavender sugar flowers. Sophie and Thomas's initials appeared across the upper tiers. Michael's and mine were placed near the bottom. My mother moved through the room in a sequined lavender gown, telling guests that I had been delayed at the salon. My father stood near the entrance, repeatedly checking his phone. At noon, Daniel had reminded him that the $57,000 ballroom balance was due. My father replied that the bride was handling it. Daniel showed him the contract. The bride is not a contracting party. My father said it was a private family arrangement. Daniel gave him until 4:30 to secure payment before the venue suspended dinner and full bar service. At 4, my father attempted to charge portions of the balance to 3 credit cards. 2 declined because the amounts exceeded his available limits. The third covered $8,000. My mother insisted I would arrive with a cashier's check. At 4:40, Daniel informed them that the kitchen would not begin full dinner service until a payment plan was signed and an additional amount secured. My father became angry. "You were told Claire Dalton was responsible. We received written clarification before the event," Daniel said. "The agreement is under your and your wife's names. That was temporary. There is no temporary designation in the contract." My mother demanded to see the records. Daniel showed her Ellen's notice and the venue's acknowledgement. My name appeared nowhere as a signatory. According to the incident report, my mother said, "She would never do this to us." By 5, guests had begun noticing that something was wrong. The anniversary ceremony was supposed to begin, but Sophie refused to descend the staircase until I arrived. "I am not going first if Claire is not here," she told my mother. That was not how she had behaved during planning. But doubt had been growing since the final dinner. Thomas asked Sophie again whether she had ever personally heard me agree. She admitted she had not. My mother interrupted them. "She agreed by participating." Thomas replied, "She never participated. We kept telling ourselves she would." My father ordered the quartet to continue playing. At 5:10, he called Michael several times. At 5:15, my mother left a voicemail, saying my grandmother's health was failing because of me. My grandmother was sitting beside me at Willow Creek, eating lemon cake. At 5:20, Sophie went to the bridal suite and changed into a backup white gown purchased with my father's card. She looked at herself in the mirror and reportedly said, "This does not feel right." My mother answered, "It will when everyone sees you." At 5:28, Daniel approached my parents with a payment agreement. They could pay $15,000 that evening and finance the remainder through the venue's collections process. Services would be reduced, but dinner could proceed. My father refused. He continued insisting I would arrive. At 5:30, Daniel followed the contingency plan approved by the venue's legal team. The ballroom lights dimmed. My mother smiled. She still believed the problem could be controlled. The large screen above the stage came alive. The first image showed the invitation. A message appeared beneath it. This celebration was planned without the bride's consent. The room became quiet. Then I appeared on screen wearing my wedding dress. My ring was visible. "If you are watching this," I said, "then you were invited to a celebration I never agreed to attend." Someone near the front gasped. The video showed my mother's email to the florist. "Claire is delighted to host the combined celebration. She will be responsible for payment." Then the couture's email. Then the lavender summary page. Ballroom package. $63,000. Expected payer. Claire Dalton. My voice continued. "I did not write these messages. I did not approve this budget. I did not authorize my parents or sister to use my name." The attempted gown purchase appeared next, with all private information removed. A timestamp showed that the gown had been ordered for Sophie's address. Guests began whispering. The screen displayed the ballroom contract. James Dalton. Margaret Dalton. 2 signatures. Neither was mine. Then came the vendor acknowledgments confirming that I had no financial responsibility. My father pushed through the crowd toward the production booth. "Turn it off." Daniel stood in his path. "The statement was reviewed and approved because your event materials represented Claire as a participating bride." My mother stared at the screen. She did not look angry yet. She looked confused, as though the world had violated an agreement only she understood. The video returned to my face. "This morning, at 9:47, Michael and I were married at Willow Creek." A photograph from the ceremony appeared. Michael and I stood beneath the oak tree, smiling at each other. My grandmother was visible in the front row. My mother made a sharp sound. Guests turned toward her. For days, she had told people my grandmother's health depended on the ballroom celebration. There, my grandmother was healthy, smiling, and present at the wedding my mother had not controlled. "I did not abandon my wedding," I said on screen. "I reclaimed it." The room erupted in whispers. Some guests lifted their phones. Others stared at my parents. My statement continued. "My family chose this ballroom, this menu, these decorations, and this anniversary ceremony. They signed the agreements after I declined to sign. Tonight's financial responsibility belongs to the people who made those choices." For most of my life, I was told that being strong meant paying for everyone else's decisions. I no longer accept that definition. I wish you all a safe evening, but I will not be coming through those doors. The final frame displayed one sentence. "Silence is not consent." Then the screen went dark. For several seconds, no one moved. My father shouted at Daniel. My mother began telling guests the evidence had been taken out of context. But context could not erase signatures. Sophie stood at the top of the staircase in her white gown. Every face turned toward her. My mother called upward. "Come down. We will continue." Sophie gripped the railing. Thomas stood at the bottom. "Do not," he said. My mother turned on him. "This is your anniversary." "No," Thomas replied. "This is Claire's wedding wearing Sophie's dress." According to several guests, that was the moment the room changed. Until then, people had been confused. After Thomas spoke, they understood. Sophie looked at my mother. "Did Claire ever say yes?" My mother's face hardened. "She did not say no until it was too late." "That is not yes." My father shouted, "This is not the place." Sophie laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You created the place." She descended the staircase slowly. "Not for a ceremony. To leave." Thomas followed her. My mother tried to stop them, but Sophie pulled her arm away. "You told me she agreed." She would have if she loved this family. The words were heard by everyone nearby. Sophie's face changed. Perhaps for the first time, she heard the rule beneath our entire childhood. Love meant surrender. If you resisted, you were the betrayer. Sophie walked out of the ballroom. Many guests followed. Some left because the event felt dishonest. Others left because dinner service had not begun. Several relatives approached Daniel to apologize for the scene. The quartet stopped playing. Waiters removed champagne from the tables because the full bar balance remained unpaid. The 5-tier cake stood untouched. By 7, fewer than 30 guests remained. My father finally signed the venue's payment plan. The $8,000 already charged to his card was credited toward the balance. He accepted responsibility for the remaining ballroom debt, plus separate vendor bills and administrative fees. The event ended before dinner. At Willow Creek, I knew none of this yet. Michael and I were sitting near the lake when I turned on my phone shortly after 8. There were 68 missed calls. The voicemails began with demands. Then, threats. Then, panic. The final message came from Sophie. Her voice was unsteady. "I asked Mom whether you ever agreed. She said you never said yes, but she knew you would eventually. I do not know why I let that sound normal." I listened twice. Then I turned off the phone again. Michael sat beside me. "What happened?" "I think the ballroom is over." He looked across the darkening water. "And how do you feel?" I searched for triumph. I expected satisfaction. What I felt was grief, mixed with relief. "I feel like something finally broke." Michael took my hand. Maybe it needed to. My parents arrived at our apartment at 10 the next morning. Sophie and Thomas came separately. Ellen was already seated at our dining table with a leather portfolio and a small recording device placed in plain view. She had advised me to document the conversation. Because everyone was physically present, she announced that the meeting would be recorded. My parents objected until Ellen explained that they were free to leave. They stayed. My mother had not removed all of the previous night's makeup. Mascara remained beneath her eyes, and her lavender gown had been replaced by a wrinkled cream sweater. My father looked as if he had not slept. Sophie wore no makeup. Thomas sat beside her but did not touch her. My mother began before anyone had taken a seat. "How dare you humiliate us in front of everyone we know?" I gestured toward the chairs. "We are not going to shout. You disappeared from your own wedding. I attended my wedding. You know what I mean. I know what you wanted me to mean." My father struck the table with his palm. "You will pay the ballroom balance." Ellen opened the portfolio. "No, she will not." My mother turned toward her. "This is a family matter." It became a legal matter when contracts and unauthorized financial transactions were involved. Ellen placed the ballroom agreement on the table. She turned it toward my parents. "These are your signatures." My father barely looked at the page. "We signed temporarily. There is no temporary signatory provision. We expected reimbursement. Expectation is not a contract." My mother pointed at me. "She was the bride." Ellen answered calmly. "A person does not become financially liable for an event merely because someone describes her as the bride." She produced the venue acknowledgement. Before the event, the ballroom confirmed in writing that Claire was not a contracting party. Then the florist's confirmation. The caterers. The photographers. The quartets. Each document stated the same thing. My name was not financially responsible. My father looked at me. "You planned this." I protected myself. "You tricked us into signing." "I told you I would not sign." Daniel explained that whoever signed would remain responsible. "You signed anyway. Because we trusted you." The words almost made me laugh. "You did not trust me. You counted on my inability to say no." My mother leaned forward. "You have always helped this family." "I gave Sophie my education fund. That was years ago." "You used a credit account linked to my name. We repaid most of it." "I repaid it." "We were struggling." "You attempted to order a gown using my card." My mother glanced at Sophie. "That was a misunderstanding." Sophie looked at her. "You said Claire approved it." "I said she would understand." "That is not the same thing." My mother's expression hardened. "Do not turn against me after everything I have done for you." Sophie flinched. Thomas placed one hand on the table. "Margaret, you told all of us." Claire had agreed. She participated in the planning. She attended one dinner and one venue tour. She did not object strongly enough. The room went silent. Ellen did not need to say anything. My mother had finally spoken the truth. She believed my boundaries were valid only if they were loud enough to inconvenience her. Sophie stared at the floor. "You always said Claire was stronger," she whispered. My mother looked confused by the change in subject. "She is. You said I needed more because I was fragile." "You did. You told me that whenever Claire had something, she could afford to share it." "I was teaching you to depend on family." "No." Sophie raised her eyes. "You were teaching me to take from her." My father exhaled angrily. "This is not the time for childhood analysis." Sophie turned toward him. "You let her do it." He pointed at my mother. "This entire event was her idea." My mother stared at him. "You booked the ballroom." "Because you said Claire had approved. You told me to make it unforgettable. With her money, not ours." There it was. The center of everything. Not love. Not unity. Not celebration. My money. My mother looked at my father as though he had betrayed her, even though he had merely said aloud what they both understood. Thomas stood. "I am leaving." Sophie looked at him. "Are you leaving me?" "I am leaving this conversation. What happens to us depends on whether you keep pretending you did not know any of this was wrong." Tears filled Sophie's eyes. "I knew some of it was wrong." "Then stop saying you were completely fooled." He walked toward the door. Sophie remained seated. Ellen continued with the practical consequences. The venue had established a payment schedule. My parents still owed a large portion of the ballroom balance after the deposit and card payment. The florist, photographer, quartet, and production vendors had separate non-refundable charges because materials, staff, and services had already been reserved. Some costs had been reduced after dinner, and bar service were suspended, but the debts remained substantial. My father asked whether they could sue me. Ellen's answer was direct. You may file whatever claim you choose. Based on the documents, I see no viable basis. If you falsely allege that Claire signed or authorized these agreements, we will respond with the vendor records and the attempted unauthorized card transaction. My mother began crying. Not quietly. She covered her face and said I had destroyed the family. For once, I did not comfort her. The family was not destroyed because I refused to pay a bill, I said. It was damaged because all of you believed my life belonged to you. She lowered her hands. What do you want from us? It was the first time she had asked. The answer came easily. Distance. My father shook his head. You will regret cutting off your parents. I regret how long I allowed you to use me. Sophie wiped her eyes. I am sorry. I looked at her. For which part? She opened her mouth. No answer came. That is why I cannot accept the apology yet. You are sorry about the outcome. I do not know whether you understand the choices. She nodded slowly. My father gathered the documents. His hands shook with anger. As he stood, I remembered the wooded parcel he had called untouchable. The land that represented the Dalton legacy. For a moment, I wondered whether he would sell it. Then I hated myself for still worrying about how they would solve a problem they had chosen. I opened the door. My mother passed first. My father followed. Sophie remained in the hallway. Was Grandma really at your wedding? Yes. She knew? I asked her what she wanted. Mom never did. Sophie lowered her eyes. I do not think anyone has ever asked me either. That does not excuse what you did to me. I know. It was the first honest response she had given. She walked away. I closed the door. The click sounded small, but the apartment changed around it. For years, every space I occupied had felt temporarily mine, as though my family might enter at any moment and rearrange my life. That morning, the apartment finally felt like home. The consequences unfolded over the following months. My parents attempted to dispute the ballroom debt, but the signatures and written notices were clear. The venue and vendors agreed to payment plans, but refused to erase the balances. My father's cards were nearly exhausted. Their savings disappeared. 3 months later, they listed the wooded family parcel for sale. The land my father had sworn no debt could touch was purchased by a conservation group and added to a protected trail system. When I learned that, I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I thought about the difference between legacy and possession. My father believed legacy was land bearing his name. I had come to believe legacy was what remained in other people after your choices touched them. Sophie and Thomas separated temporarily. Thomas did not leave because of the ballroom bill alone. He left because Sophie initially continued blaming me for exposing the truth rather than blaming herself for participating in the lie. 6 weeks after the confrontation, a handwritten letter arrived. Claire, I do not expect forgiveness. I spent my entire life believing your strength existed for my benefit. Mom told me I was delicate and that you could handle more. Whenever you earned something, she taught me to ask why you had not shared it. Whenever you said no, she told me you were jealous. I believed her because the arrangement benefited me. That is the part I have been afraid to admit. I was manipulated, but I was not powerless. I accepted your tuition money. I ordered the gown. I allowed people to treat your wedding as though it belonged to me. I am beginning therapy. Thomas says he needs to see change, not promises. You do not have to write back. I only wanted to say something I should have said years ago. You were never difficult to love. We were difficult to satisfy. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Forgiveness might come one day, but it would no longer be demanded according to someone else's schedule. For the first time, even my silence belonged to me. 1 year after our wedding, Michael woke me before sunrise. We had moved into a small house in the suburbs several months earlier. It was not grand, but it had wide windows, a quiet kitchen, and enough space for a garden. I had designed the bookshelves myself. We planted lavender near the porch, not because the color belonged to Sophie, but because I refused to let my family own anything beautiful. Michael told me to dress warmly, then drove us toward Willow Creek. When we reached the lake house, Janice, Ellen, my grandmother, Michael's parents, and the same small group who had attended our ceremony were waiting beneath the oak tree. White ribbons moved in the morning breeze. On a table near the water sat coffee, pastries, and a small lemon cake. Michael handed me a wrapped package. Inside was a dark wooden frame. Behind the glass was our marriage certificate, signed at 9:47 on the morning my family expected me to become a supporting character in Sophie's celebration. Beneath it, Michael had added a small brass plate. The day silence stopped, meaning yes. I traced the words with my finger. For years, I believed freedom would arrive as a dramatic feeling, triumph, revenge, or relief. Instead, it had arrived gradually. It was coffee in a quiet kitchen. It was checking my bank account without fear. It was a home where no one entered without permission. It was the ability to hear my mother's name without immediately preparing to solve a crisis. My parents rarely contacted me. When they did, they wrote short messages that avoided responsibility and focused on how much they missed the family being normal. I did not answer. Normal had required my silence. I was no longer willing to purchase it. Sophie wrote 2 more letters. The second described therapy and the slow collapse of the stories our mother had taught her. The third did not ask for forgiveness. It asked what boundaries I would need if we ever spoke again. That was the first question that showed me she might be changing. I answered briefly. I told her reconciliation would require time, honesty, respect, and an understanding that any boundary I set was not an invitation to negotiate. We were not close. Not yet. Perhaps we never would be. But I no longer needed a perfect ending to prove I had made the right decision. My parents had lost money, land, and reputation. Those consequences belonged to them. My victory was not that they suffered. It was that their suffering no longer controlled my choices. Several months after the ballroom disaster, Ellen invited me to attend a support meeting for people affected by financial abuse within families. At first, I only listened. A woman described discovering utility accounts opened in her name. A college student had been pressured into giving her parents access to her bank account. A man had co-signed a business loan for his brother after being told that refusing would destroy the family. Their stories sounded different. The language surrounding them sounded exactly the same. Be the bigger person. You can afford it. Family helps family. Do not embarrass us. You are stronger. At the next meeting, I spoke. I held up a printed copy of the email in which my mother had promised vendors I would pay. This is not only a piece of evidence, I said. It is a reminder that people can use loving language while violating your consent. A young woman near the front raised her hand. If I remove my parents from my account, will they think I am betraying them? I recognized the fear in her face. Setting a boundary is not betrayal, I said. A healthy relationship can survive the word no. If someone needs unlimited access to control you, they are not asking for trust, they are asking for surrender. She began to cry. So did I. But my tears felt different from the ones I had cried in the bathroom at Sophie's first wedding. Those tears had come from disappearing. These came from being seen. By the time Michael and I returned to Willow Creek for our anniversary, I was volunteering with the group twice a month. I helped people organize records, change passwords, identify unauthorized transactions, and find legal assistance. I was not an attorney. I never pretended to be. I was simply someone who understood how easily the word family could be turned into a financial weapon. That afternoon, after everyone left the lake house, Michael and I remained beneath the oak tree. The water was calm. The framed marriage certificate rested beside us. Do you ever wish you had confronted them the moment you heard them? He asked. I considered the question. Sometimes. Would it have changed anything? They would have denied it. Then they would have changed the plan just enough to make me feel unreasonable. Michael nodded. So you are glad you waited? I am glad I stopped trying to convince them. I let their choices speak for them. He took my hand. We walked toward the shore. For most of my life, I had believed strength meant enduring more than everyone else. Now, I understood strength differently. Strength was locking a card before the damage spread. Strength was reading a contract. Strength was asking whether guilt was evidence. Strength was refusing to rescue adults from choices they made knowingly. Strength was accepting that someone might call you cruel, simply because your boundary inconvenienced them. That evening, we returned home. Michael switched on the pendant light above our kitchen table. Warm light spread across the room, reflecting in the windows I had chosen because I wanted the house to feel open. I laughed. Not to make anyone comfortable. Not to hide pain. Not to prove that I was grateful for being used. I laughed because I was happy. My parents had tried to turn my wedding into a transaction. Instead, they gave me the moment I finally understood my worth. They believed the most expensive part of that day was the ballroom. They were wrong. The real cost was losing the daughter who had always paid for their choices. And the best investment I ever made was refusing to pay one more time.